In a small apartment above a quiet street, the alarm rang before sunrise. The sound was gentle, almost polite, but it carried a weight that felt heavier than the early morning air. Daniel lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city breathe. Somewhere outside, a bus sighed as it stopped. A dog barked once and went quiet. Life was already moving, even though he was not. Daniel had heard the word consistency more times than he could remember. Teachers used it. Coaches repeated it. Motivational speakers built entire careers around it. Yet to him, it always felt like a distant idea, something meant for other people with better habits and stronger discipline. He was the kind of person who started things with excitement and ended them with excuses. New notebooks filled with hopeful plans. Gym memberships unused after the first burst of motivation. English practice apps downloaded and forgotten. This morning felt no different from many others. He knew he should get up. He knew he should practice his English listening, maybe read a few pages of a book, maybe write something. But knowing and doing were not close friends in his life. They nodded at each other from across the room and went their separate ways. As he finally sat up, the cold floor touching his feet, a memory surfaced. It was small and almost unimportant, yet it stayed with him. When Daniel was a child, his grandfather used to water a plant every single morning. The plant was nothing special. No colorful flowers. No sweet smell. Just green leaves reaching quietly toward the window. One day Daniel asked why he never forgot. His grandfather smiled and said that forgetting was easy, but showing up was a choice. Daniel had laughed at the time. Now, years later, the memory felt heavier than it once did. He made his coffee slowly, watching the steam rise, letting the warmth settle into his hands. The city outside looked tired but honest. People walked to work without excitement, but with purpose. Nobody looked inspired. Nobody looked famous. Yet they showed up. That thought stayed with him as he sat at the small table near the window. Daniel had promised himself many times that he would improve his English. He wanted to speak clearly. He wanted to understand movies without subtitles. He wanted confidence when talking to people from different countries. Every promise felt strong at the beginning, like a spark. But sparks fade quickly if there is nothing to keep them alive. That morning, instead of opening social media, he opened a simple English story. The language was clear. The sentences were calm. He did not understand every word, but he did not stop. He listened. He let the sounds flow through him. His mind wandered, then returned. Wandered again, then returned. After a short time, he closed the app. It did not feel magical. It did not feel life-changing. It felt small. Almost disappointing. He wondered if this was how change was supposed to feel. Quiet. Ordinary. Easy to ignore. The day moved forward like most days do. Work was busy but not exciting. Conversations felt rushed. Time slipped through his fingers without asking permission. Yet something had shifted slightly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for him to feel it when the evening came. That night, instead of telling himself he would practice English tomorrow, he listened again. A short story. A calm voice. Familiar words returning like old friends. He noticed that his ears were adjusting. His mind was less tense. The story made more sense than it had in the morning. Before sleeping, Daniel felt something unfamiliar. It was not pride. It was not excitement. It was quiet satisfaction. Like putting one brick on the ground and stepping back, knowing a wall would not appear overnight, but trusting the process anyway. Days passed, each one similar to the last. Wake up. Work. Practice a little. Sleep. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden success. No viral moment. No applause. But slowly, something inside Daniel began to change. At first, the change was uncomfortable. His mind tried to convince him that this was pointless. That missing one day would not matter. That he deserved rest. That tomorrow was always available. The voice was clever and familiar. It had protected him from effort for years, but something else had grown stronger. A quieter voice. One that did not shout or demand. It simply said, "Show up again." So he did. He listened to English stories while walking to work. He repeated sentences quietly under his breath. He noticed patterns in the language. Words that once felt foreign now felt familiar. Not friendly yet, but less threatening. One evening, while watching a movie, he realized something without meaning to. He understood a full conversation without reading the subtitles. The moment passed quickly, but it left a mark. He paused the movie and smiled, not because he had achieved something big, but because he knew how it happened. It did not come from motivation. It did not come from talent. It came from showing up on days that felt boring. On days that felt pointless. On days when nobody was watching, consistency began to change more than his English. His mornings felt calmer. His confidence grew quietly. He stopped waiting for the perfect mood to begin something. He understood that action came first, and feelings followed later. Daniel thought again about his grandfather and the plant by the window. How it grew slowly, silently, without asking for attention. He realized that his life had been waiting for big moments to change. While ignoring the power of small ones, there were still days when he missed practice. Days when he felt tired. Days when doubt returned. But now, missing one day did not turn into missing forever. He came back. Again and again. One afternoon, a coworker noticed his English and asked how long he had been studying. Daniel paused. He did not know how to answer. There was no dramatic story. No secret method. No special trick. Just time and repetition. He smiled and said he practiced a little every day. That answer surprised even him. Consistency did not change his life in a loud way. It did not announce itself. It worked quietly in the background, like a steady heartbeat. And for the first time, Daniel trusted himself not because he was perfect, but because he returned when he failed. As he walked home that evening, the city lights flickered on one by one. The streets looked the same. Yet everything felt different. He was still the same person, but with a new relationship to effort. A new respect for patience. A new understanding that change was not about intensity, but about loyalty to the process. He knew this journey was not finished. In many ways, it had just begun. The real test would come when progress slowed, when excitement faded, when results were invisible. But now, he had something stronger than motivation. He had a habit of showing up, and that habit was quietly reshaping his life. The change did not arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, almost politely, the way sunlight enters a room through a thin gap in the curtains. Daniel did not wake up one morning feeling like a new person. Instead, he woke up feeling slightly more willing to begin. Consistency had settled into his life like a calm companion. It did not push him. It did not shout. It simply waited for him each day, asking the same gentle question. "Are you here again?" Some mornings, Daniel answered with energy. Other mornings, he answered with tired eyes and a heavy mind. But he answered. And that was enough. As his English listening practice continued, something unexpected began to happen. He started hearing the language everywhere. Not just in stories or lessons, but in his thoughts. Simple sentences formed naturally in his mind while brushing his teeth or standing in line at the store. At first, this felt strange, like hearing an echo of someone else's voice. Over time, it felt normal. One evening, Daniel found himself in a small cafe after work. The place was warm and crowded, filled with quiet conversations and the sound of cups touching saucers. At the table next to him, two tourists were speaking English. Normally, he would have ignored them or felt nervous just hearing the language so close. That night, he listened without trying. He understood more than he expected. Not every word. Not every joke. But the meaning was there, flowing beneath the surface. He smiled to himself, not because he felt proud, but because he felt present. One of the tourists struggled to explain something to the cashier. The moment stretched awkwardly. Without planning to, Daniel leaned forward and helped, choosing his words carefully, calmly. The cashier nodded, grateful. The tourist smiled and said thank you. It was a small interaction. It lasted only a moment. But as Daniel returned to his seat, his heart beat faster than usual. Not from fear. From recognition. This was new. Later that night, he walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, replaying the moment in his mind. He realized that confidence had not arrived through courage alone. It had grown through repetition. Through quiet practice when nobody was watching. Through staying consistent even when progress felt invisible. Consistency was changing how he spoke, but it was also changing how he listened. He became more patient with himself and with others. When someone spoke slowly or made mistakes, he no longer judged. He understood what it meant to search for the right words. At work, his behavior began to shift. He showed up on time more often. He finished tasks instead of leaving them half done. He no longer waited for the perfect mood to begin. He began because beginning had become familiar. A colleague noticed and commented on it one afternoon. Not in a dramatic way. Just a simple observation. "You seem more focused lately." Daniel nodded, unsure how to explain it. Focus was not something he chased anymore. It followed him because he had stopped running away from effort. There were still days when everything felt heavy. Days when his mind whispered that missing one practice session would not matter. Sometimes he listened to that voice. Sometimes he did not. The difference now was that he always came back. He no longer told himself stories about failure. Missing a day did not mean he had failed. It meant he was human. And being human did not disqualify him from growth. As weeks turned into months, Daniel noticed changes in his relationships. He listened more. He interrupted less. Conversations felt less rushed. He was not thinking about what to say next. He was present with what was being said now, friends began to trust him with deeper conversations. Not because he had better advice, but because he stayed. He showed up emotionally the same way he showed up in his habits. Consistency had taught him something unexpected. It had taught him reliability. And reliability built trust, not only with others, but with himself. One night, while organizing old notebooks, Daniel found pages filled with abandoned plans. Ideas started with enthusiasm and left unfinished. Normally, these pages filled him with quiet shame. This time, he felt something different. He felt understanding. He realized that he had not been lazy or incapable. He had simply relied on motivation instead of structure. He had waited for inspiration instead of building a rhythm. He closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf, not as a reminder of failure, but as proof of how far he had come. His English continued to improve, but the language was no longer the main goal. It had become a mirror. Through it, he saw how small daily actions shaped identity. How repetition created belief. How belief influenced behavior. One morning, Daniel woke up before his alarm. The room was quiet. The city outside was still half asleep. He made his coffee and sat by the window, listening to an English story as the sky slowly changed color. The voice in the story spoke about patience, about long roads and unseen progress. Daniel smiled, feeling the words settle into him like familiar advice from an old friend. He thought about the version of himself who struggled to begin. Who waited for the perfect time. Who believed change had to be dramatic to be real. He wished he could speak to that version now. Not with harsh advice. Just with honesty. Change is quieter than you think. And stronger. Consistency did not make his life perfect. Problems still existed. Doubt still visited. Fear still knocked sometimes. But consistency gave him a way forward when motivation disappeared. It taught him that discipline was not punishment. It was care. Care for the future version of himself who would one day look back and be grateful. Daniel began sharing his experience with others, not as a teacher, but as a fellow traveler. When friends said they wanted to improve their English or build better habits, he did not give speeches. He simply said, "Start small and return often." Some listened. Some did not. He understood now that advice mattered less than example. One evening, he received a message from a friend who had noticed his progress and decided to follow a similar path. The message was short but meaningful. "Thank you for showing me that consistency actually works." Daniel read it twice, then set his phone down and stared out the window. The city lights flickered again, just like before. But this time, they felt like witnesses to a journey that had been unfolding quietly all along. He realized that consistency had changed his life not by adding something new, but by removing resistance. It removed the drama around effort. It removed the excuses that once felt comforting. It removed the idea that change required permission. What remained was simple and powerful. Show up. Do a little. Return tomorrow. As Daniel prepared for sleep that night, he felt calm. Not because everything was perfect, but because he trusted the process. He trusted himself to continue. Even when progress slowed, even when doubt returned, and that trust was the real transformation. If you are listening to this story and wondering whether consistency can change your life too, remember this. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to feel inspired. You only need to begin and return. Quiet effort builds loud results over time. I share stories like this every day to help you improve your English and grow at the same time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.